All right, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of She Talks Business. I am super excited to be with our guest today. This is a woman that I met many years ago. And I have to say, when I first was introduced to Arielle Ford, I was a little bit starstruck. I remember someone on her team reached out to me and asked if I would speak at her 21st Century Book Marketing event in San Diego. And you don't know this, Arielle, but I actually got scolded by my husband because I literally had the conversation, I think it was with Jesse, about whether or not I was good enough to speak at your event. And when I hung up the phone, my husband was like, "What is wrong with you? They wouldn't be talking to you if they didn't think you were good enough to come and speak at this event." And so it's a little bit of
That's funny.
backstory that you don't know.
If you hear
So
any noise back there, my cat is running around my office like a lunatic, but I don't know why he's so excited. So,
that's okay. We have dogs here and they often make noises. So we are a pet friendly show. We don't edit them out
good.
unless they go crazy. So Arielle, I wanted to talk to you about a bunch of things. One of the things that I really respect about you is the variety that you have had in your career as an entrepreneur. And this season on She Talks Business, we're talking a lot about money. And, money is a beautiful thing, but money is also, when I worked in corporate, they used to call it golden handcuffs. It prevented you from making changes. And while a lot of people who have a typical job are not, they're not averse to changing jobs, what I have found in the last almost 2 decades of being an entrepreneur is most small business owners stay doing the same thing for a long time because they are afraid that if they make change, they're going to lose money. So, could you tell us a little bit about your career, because it's been a very varied career? You've done a lot of different things. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about where you started, what you've done, and where you're at now in your career?
All right. Well, that's a lot of time to cover. My cat is just driving me nuts. He's like, I don't know, what is it? What's there? I don't get it. Anyway, so I started off working in South Florida in the tourism industry for county government.
Oh,
And
wow.
it was a really fun job. I was doing PR and marketing, and I was the on-camera spokesperson at various times for what was going on, and it was all great. And then one day, this business owner talked me into leaving the job that I loved to come and work for him. And he promised me the sun, the stars, and the moon, and it all sounded wonderful and lots of money. And it lasted 90 days. And at the end of 90 days, I got fired. And I never saw it coming. I mean, I guess if I paid attention, I would have seen that I was asked to do the impossible, that I was never going to be able to do what they wanted me to do. But anyway, I got fired, and I was in South Florida thinking, well, what am I going to do now? And what would I really like to do? And I had always wanted to move to LA. Even though I'd only been to LA once, there was something magical about California. And I had about $800 in cash. We're talking 1984 or something. And I thought, well, I'll just go out there. And if it doesn't work out, I can always come home and live with my parents for a while and get another job. And on the flight from Miami to Los Angeles, I read this book. I don't think I'm going to remember the name of it, but it was basically a book about manifesting, something I'd never heard of. It never occurred to me that I could co-create my future with the universe, that I actually had some say in how it went. And I landed in LA, and within 9 days, I had a job, I had a place to live, and I had a new best friend. Everything that I knew that I needed to get started. And that was sort of the start of this whole new life. And I ended up, working in PR again and really enjoying it. And then I started my own business in 1987, and it took off. I was like this huge success very quickly. And that lasted for 3 whole years until this recession hit LA, and I didn't know what a recession was. I went to college, but I didn't have an MBA. Suddenly, I had 4,000 square feet of office space on Wilshire Boulevard in Beverly Hills and 8 full-time employees. And 70% of my business had vanished pretty much within 6 weeks. And I was like, oh my God, what do I do? I mean, I was smart enough to know that I had to get rid of the office space and the employees, but who was I? What was my identity? What was I going to do with my life? And I was scared, I was like, it's like, oh my God, I'm going to have to polish my own nails, which I'd never really done before because I had this business and I had all this money. And the thing that I loved about my business was I had all this money and now suddenly the money's gone. So I spent about a year being very depressed. I ended up breaking up with my boyfriend, getting Epstein-Barr, so I was sick, having no work, and I was broke. It's like the trifecta of horror. Mm-hmm. And one day, a friend of mine took me to lunch, and he basically said, if you could represent anything or anybody in the world, who would it be? This is now like 1991. And I said, oh, there's this man out there. I'm sure you've never heard of him, but I would want to represent it. This man named Deepak Chopra. And my friend said to me, well, I have heard of him because my friend Penny works for him. So I'll put you in touch with Penny. 2 hours later, this woman, Penny, calls and says, oh, Dr. Chopra just called me from Boston this morning where he lives. I'm in LA. And he told me to find him a publicist. And here you are. And she said, he's coming to town next week. I'll set up a meeting. So a week later, I go to meet with him. He had just given a talk to like 20 doctors somewhere. I mean, he was really pretty much unknown at that point. And he comes in 25 minutes late and he doesn't even say, I'm sorry. He just shows up 25 minutes late. And he said to me, I only have 5 minutes. And I said, well, that's okay. I only need 2. He said, go. I said, well, if you're half as smart as I think you are, you'll hire me. And he said, deal. And that was the start of a 12-year working relationship. And we're still friends at this point. So that was the start of this new PR business where I only represented self-help and spiritual authors for many, many years. And at the same time, I got married and my husband and I opened up a literary agency together. So that was this whole other spinoff on what I started doing. And then right after 9/11, I started getting really bored with the business because the business had changed. Prior to 9/11, Oprah was the hot thing. I could get clients on Oprah and all these other talk shows and on the news media. Suddenly, nobody wanted to talk about personal growth anymore. We were potential war. It was terrible. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to shut down the business. I don't know what I'm going to do. I have no plan B, but I know I can't keep knocking my head against a wall. And the weirdest thing happened. I shut everything down. And 30 days later, I get a call from a man I barely know named Gay Hendricks, Dr. Gay Hendricks. And he says to me, I want you to come to my house in Ojai. I have a business proposition for you. And I had nothing else to do. My business was shut down. So I take this 5-hour drive, sit down with him, and he tells me about a startup he wants to do. And he offers me a partnership in the startup. And I said, yes. And a year later, we sold it for $6 million.
Wow.
Now, I could have made millions, but I didn't because I had the opportunity to hang on to my stock or to sell it. And given what I knew about our buyers, I thought, well, I'm going to hang on to the stock. And then I'm going to make more money down the line. Well, that's not what happened.
Oh, no.
Another story, here's what did happen. Had I made the $2 million I could have made, I would have immediately gone out and bought a house in La Jolla where I live. 6 months after we sold the business was 2007 when the whole financial crisis went crazy and real estate prices tanked. So had I spent my money on a house, I would have been out of a job and underwater with a big house. So it actually worked out perfectly. But at the time, I'm like, oh my God, what did you do? That's so stupid. So that was another career. And then I was doing the book marketing things for a couple of years. And I had created an internet product for myself called the Soulmate Kit. Because I'd already written many books by then. I didn't want to write another book. Anyway, a big publisher saw my internet project and offered me 6 figures to turn it into a book. That book turned into a whole new career of becoming a speaker and a workshop leader doing love and relationships. And I'm pretty sure I'm at the tail end of that one now, because it seems like every 7 years, I sort of get complete with what I'm doing. And even though I don't know where the money's going to come from for the next 7 years, I know that it's time for a change. And I just leap. And now, am I scared? Yes. Am I terrified? Yes. Do I wake up in the middle of the night thinking, oh my God, where's the money going to come from? But now that I'm 70, I finally understand a couple of things, which is one, the money always comes. Two, I never know in advance where it's going to come from. And three, I can't even manifest what the next career move is because my imagination isn't big enough to call in the stuff that comes to me when I get out of my own way.
That's incredible. Like I'm listening to everything that you talk about, and it's remarkable. So that book that you read really changed your life in a profound way, because you learned at a young age that you could co-create and you could have faith.
Yeah.
How hard has it been for you to continue to have faith at those junctures where you've made big changes?
Oh, it's been really hard. I mean, there have been days where I was like hiding underneath the covers, where I just couldn't get out of my own way. But I also knew that if I didn't make the change, that I'd somehow get myself sick because I was either bored or tired or frustrated, and I wasn't happy doing what I was doing. And internally, I knew it was time to move on.
Mm-hmm.
So it's never been easy. And I have a lot of tricks that I use around it. I mean, there were the last time I made this move, I used to get out my retirement account and I'd look at my balances and I'd have to remind myself, you're not going to starve, right? You may drain the retirement account at some point, but you're not going to starve. So it's not easy, but I've never felt like I had a choice. Like there was just this internal knowing that that's complete. It's time to move on. I had to be with the uncertainty, which I think all of us have learned through these pandemic years, is how to be with uncertainty, because in the past we lived as if we had security. Oh, I have a job, right? I am going to get a paycheck. My health insurance is being paid. Nobody has that anymore. We, like somebody like pulled the rug out from 8 billion people and basically said, you're on your own, which we are. So it's really up to me to do my own emotional management. And I have a big bag of tricks. I do a lot of EFT tapping, I do the Sedona method, I do the Heart Math Inner Balance app twice a day. I go for walks, I take aromatherapy, baths, and I breathe a lot. And I remind myself that the money always comes, even though I don't know where it is at this moment.
I love that. I love that. That is going to be the title of this podcast. The money always comes. So you are at a juncture right now where you're kind of winding down one aspect of your business and life, and you are starting into a new one. You just published your first fiction book, right? The Love Thief. So talk to us about that. How did you find the courage to shift gears and write that book? And what are you envisioning for your future?
Well, I pretty much don't think about the future that much because that's kind of the scary part of life. But what happened with the book, I had written 11 nonfiction books over the years. I had never considered writing a novel until it showed up in my head and started talking to me over and over and over. It was driving me crazy because I was like, go away. I don't know how to do that, because there's really no correlation between writing fiction and nonfiction. They're not connected really, except words are involved. And I don't want to do this, and I'm not going to do it. And while I was, trying to push this project away, I took this course on masterclass.com. It was called How to Write a Thriller with Dan Brown, who wrote Da Vinci Code, my all-time favorite book, right? And I thought, well, just for fun, it'll be fun to see Dan Brown on video and hear what he has to say and blah, blah, blah. On the third video of the course, he was talking about location as a character in the book. as Florence is a character in the Da Vinci Code.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that if I were going to write this novel, which takes place in Rishikesh, India, I would have to go back to India to do a bunch of research. Now, going to India business class is at least $7,000. And I was like, I don't have an extra $7,000. I'm way too tall to sit and coach for 21 hours. That's not going to happen. So I had a conversation with God. And I said, okay, God, if I'm meant to write this book, I will manifest a business class ticket to India. And I thought, I'm safe. That's never going to happen. 2 days later, I had the ticket in my hand. And I ended up going off to India to do the research. And I came back and I started writing. And then the pandemic hit. And suddenly I couldn't work because I traveled to teach, can't leave the house, didn't know when I was going to leave the house. Because remember when it started, oh, it's only for 2 weeks. Oh, it's only going to be another month, right? And it turned out to be 3 years or something. So I'm home with nothing to do and I start writing and I start learning how much I don't know about writing. Anyway, 4.5 years later, the book is done. It's coming out on June 27th. I'm super excited about it. I haven't really worked in a few years, and yet money falls from the sky in the weirdest ways that I can't explain. Like I got a $7,000 check deposited into my bank account last week. My account was saying, do you know the XYZ company? Never heard of them. Well, they just gave you $7,000. Now you can't just randomly wire me money, right? You have to have all my routing codes.
Right.
So somehow I have forgotten or somebody's gifted me with money, and that's what keeps happening. So what would I like to have happen with the book? Oh, I have big plans of what I would like to have happen. Do I know if it's going to happen? I don't. Am I going to write a follow-up novel? I hope not, only because it's so much work. So I don't know. What I do know is that either through luck or karma or divine destiny, the next big thing will reveal itself to me at some point. But as of today, like if you said, what will you be doing in November? I have no idea.
That's amazing. It's amazing. And you just have such great energy about you. Like there's just a confidence and knowingness that everything is going to be okay. And I love that because you are living in abundance. You're not living in a scarcity mentality. You're not living in a place where you're, letting fear of what might not happen get in the way of making that shift or making that change. Right now we're living in a time where we are headed for the next recession. We have the highest inflation rates that we've seen in decades. People are commanding higher salaries when you are hiring them than ever before. And so there's a lot of reason for people to feel, I think, a bit of fear and anxiety around money. And yet here you are making this big change, this big shift at this time. That requires a lot of confidence and courage.
But see, we don't really know what's going to happen because they've been predicting this recession for at least 10 years, right? And then when Trump got elected, then it was like, oh my God, what's it going to do to the market? And the markets went crazy, so we don't know, but we act as if we know and we live as if we know, but it's not a reality, so I just don't go there. My husband's a news junkie, so I'm exposed to all of this all the time, but I'm just not going to buy into it because regardless, the world's upside down, right? Mm-hmm. As far as I'm concerned, we're circling the drain. I don't think anyone's coming to save us. Especially the way people are getting murdered every 27 minutes with automatic weapons. I could make myself nuts. Right. But what I do know is that I'm going to live here in this present moment. My point of consciousness is where my feet are. My feet are here, on this particular date at this hour with you. And anytime I spend trying to predict the future is just a way to terrorize myself. Mm-hmm. Right? There's a line in A Course in Miracles that gets me through everything. And it says, in this moment, I have everything that I need. And that's always true. I have enough clean air to breathe, enough fresh water to drink, a place to sleep, a place to sit, friends and family who love me. In this moment, I have everything that I need. So when I stay in this moment, I can be optimistic. If I sit down and watch the news for 20 minutes, I could be suicidal, but it's my choice.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I love that so much. It's interesting when you were talking about, asking God if it's meant to be, manifest a ticket. That's how I started my business. My mom had lost her husband, and I had a great job working for a corporation, and I was making really good money. And my husband and I were thinking about me leaving and opening a retail store. And I remember my mom's house was for sale, and she hadn't had any showings in a couple of weeks. And the last people that saw her house said there was too much work that needed to be done. So they weren't interested in it. And I remember standing in the kitchen, literally with my hands on the counter and looking up and saying, God, universe, source, whoever is out there, if I'm meant to do this right now, I'm meant to quit my job and do this thing. I need my mom to get an offer on her house, because I was supporting her financially because of the situation that she was in. And sure enough, within 48 hours, she had an offer on her house from the people who said that they were not interested in the house. And I know that, but I forget to do that on a regular basis. I forget to co-create on that level when I'm looking at something new. We're joking about make the voice go away. There's no way I'm going to get the ticket, but yet it did. So how do you co-create that way to help you have the life that you have?
Well, it's a couple of things. So people know what a visualization is, right? And they close their eyes and they look inside their head and they make all these pretty pictures. But that's not where manifestation happens. Manifestation happens in your heart, and it's a feeling. And when you can drop into the feeling, whether it's having love or abundance or good health, then you're vibrating at the frequency of the thing that you're asking for. So this was one of the things I learned in that book. And so I created for myself what I call feelingizations. And I do them as a closed-eyed process. I give them away for free on my website, where you go from your head to your heart and you recreate and reimagine and re-experience feelings of love and appreciation and gratitude. And then when you're in that feeling state, then you sort of drop in what the desire is. And if you understand quantum science, there's a couple of things that we've all been taught. The first one is there is no time. There's no past, there's no future, there's just this now moment. The other part is that we all live in the unified field. And in the unified field, we are already connected to everything and everybody. So nothing or no one is missing. It's your job just to go into your heart and reconnect in this now moment, that which you've asked for, which is already yours. So if it's money, money is not missing. It may not be in your current bank account. You may not know where it is, but money is not missing. Your divine right of abundance exists in the field. Go in and tap into it as you're remembering times of feeling abundant. Or mostly I work with single women looking for love. It's like love is not missing. Your soulmate already exists in the field. It's your job to start the relationship right now until you meet in the 3D world. There's a feelingization on my site called the Golden Cord Feelingization, which allows you to have love before first sight, where you can meet your soulmate today, start the relationship today until he or she, actually shows up at your door.
Mm-hmm. Powerful. You're making me think about all kinds of things that I need to just sit with and think about. And I think one of the things that's coming to mind for me in hearing you talk is the intentionality that you use with your bag of tricks to stay in that state of flow, or in that abundant living, and having the confidence and the belief that everything is going to be okay, because everything is okay right now.
Yes.
So
right.
talk to us about your new book. What is it about?
Yeah.
You said you
So,
went to India. Like, tell me about this book.
so it's called The Love Thief. He broke her heart, crushed her dreams, and then karma intervened. And it's the story of a 38-year-old woman who her entire life was spent trying to find the guy to have the white picket fence. And now she's about to turn 38 and it still hasn't happened. And even though she has a successful career as a chef, she's miserable until one night she meets Prince Charming under a firework-filled sky. And he's everything she ever wanted. And her life takes off and she thinks it's wonderful until it isn't. And it turns out that he's a toxic narcissist criminal. So it's both a story of, getting over the anger and grief of betrayal, as well as getting revenge. There's a very juicy revenge subplot. And most of the book takes place in India. She ends up in India to go to a special cooking school while she's trying to, mend her broken heart. And she ends up being befriended by a former psychologist who owns a spiritual bookstore. And she has all these mystical, magical experiences. So it's this story that is it's based on actual events. I had 3 girlfriends that had really bad relationships like that and held their hand through the whole thing. And the villain in the book is a composite character as well. So it's sort of a mosaic of everything I've ever learned about personal growth and spirituality in my many, many trips to India, combined with how do you overcome a broken heart? Because the research shows that overcoming a broken heart is harder than getting over a cocaine addiction.
Wow.
It's really painful and hard to do. And most of the women who've been betrayed and were in relationship with a toxic narcissist or a sociopath think it was their fault, and it wasn't. They were prey. They were targeted. And even though the red flags were there, they stepped over them. So it's a way to get to healing, to get back to love, to forgiving yourself, to forgiving others.
Wow. I can't wait to read it. Sounds
Yeah.
amazing. So you talked about the voices telling you to write this book and you kept telling them to go away. You remind me of, is it Michael Singer who wrote the Surrender Experiment? You remind me of him talking about the voices in his head. So how did you actually make, besides the ticket, what else kind of happened to make you ready to write the book?
Once I got on my first research trip back to Rishikesh, I had imagined different scenes in my head that I hadn't even written yet, because I went to India before I started writing, and everything I needed fell at my feet. Places that I imagined, like I was imagining what this spiritual bookstore looks like, and then I walked into it and it looked exactly like it looked in my head. And I imagined, different scenes in different parts of Rishikesh, and I kept tripping over them. So I knew I was in the right place doing the right thing, but it was my job to take notes so that I could put the reader into the now moment with me. Like, what did the Ganges River look like as the sun was rising? What were the sounds on the street I was hearing? What are the smells of India? I mean, India is the most delicious country on the planet. Some people like Disneyland and Disney World. I'm allergic to those places. They're just too cookie cutter, planned, clean. I don't like them at all. But India is this hodgepodge of colors, sights, sounds, smells, people, and you could stand on a street corner in Bangalore and be entertained for hours because nothing your senses are picking up are familiar. Right. Everything's different, and it's this kaleidoscope of color and smells, and it's just fabulous. So, I'd been to India many times. I actually went with Deepak. The first 4 times I went to India, I was with him, and I remember we were at Ramana Maharshi's ashram in Tamil Nadu, about to walk with 500,000 people around this mountain under the full moon of Pongal. And as we started the walk, he said to me, "Spirit is not hard to find in India. it's impossible to avoid. And, that was the experience I wanted my readers to have, not just this whole very relatable emotional heartbreak, but also going to a mystical land where healing just, runs over your toes and things change.
It's amazing. Do you think that part of why I'm going to use the word have so much luck is because you look for it? I know that there are people that talk about looking for the miracles that happen in your life every day. And if you pay attention, you see them all around you. But when you don't, you tend to see what's missing. You strike me as someone who's always looking for the good that's happening in your life.
Because I learned that looking for what's missing is the saddest form of manifestation. Because if you're looking for what's wrong, you're guaranteed to find it. That's why so many relationships don't work, because women are like heat-seeking missiles looking for what's wrong all the time. And when that's what you look for, that's what you find. There was a study done at the University of Buffalo years ago where they looked at couples who consciously choose to wear rose-colored glasses. And what they found with these people are happier, healthier, lead longer lives. Why? Because they're always looking for what's right instead of looking for what's wrong. So I've trained myself to look for what's right. Like I was just thinking this morning, I spent a couple of months working on this special campaign for my book, only to discover that it was never going to work. And I didn't know it was going to work. And I started thinking about, well, I could make a list of all the time and money I spent and that it's not working, or I could look for what's right. And when I looked for what's right, I was really, really pleased. It wasn't the direction I was headed in. Like, I created this bonus for anybody who buys my book, where I got the top 8 yoga teachers in the world, like Sean Korn, some really big names, to each make me a video of a yoga philosophy and pose that heals a negative emotion. So there's one on anger and forgiveness and guilt and uncertainty and betrayal and heartbreak. And it's really beautiful. And had I not been working on this campaign, I wouldn't have this bonus to give to my readers. Even though it didn't work like I expected it to, it's actually going to be better in the long run. And the funny part is that I've actually watched these videos for myself. Because when I figured out my program wasn't going to work, I was angry. I was really upset. And the person I was angry at the most was myself, because I made assumptions that were wrong, blah, blah, blah. And so first I healed myself with my own bonus, and now it's just going to be a gift to my readers.
That's amazing. Well, I can't wait to read your book. I really, really, really appreciate you being here. I have loved this conversation. It's probably one of the podcasts that I want to go back and listen to, because you've said so many amazing things. And I've been trying to jot notes down while also being present to the moment. So I will make sure that we have links to your website, links to the book, and all that stuff in the show notes for this episode, so that our readers can listen to or get a copy of your book and get the bonus gift that you have put together for them. And I just want to say a huge thank you, Arielle, for being here. It's just been so nice to spend this time with you.
Oh, thank you. It was really fun seeing you. It's been way too long.
It has been. And thank you for giving me a chance all those years ago to speak on your stage. It was a defining moment in my life. So I appreciate that. Thank you, everyone, for listening to this episode of She Talks Business, and we will see you again next week.